Autism Quality of Life Podcast, Episode 8.
I didn't realize until I was a young adult what an impact it had on me. I think like many people, it's like that was the water I swam in. I grew up in, that was my family, and that's what I knew.
Welcome back to the Autism Quality of Life podcast. Today I have Elaine Oswald with me. Elaine specializes in working with siblings of individuals with autism and other disabilities. She has over 15 years of experience working with youth in foster care settings, families in crisis, and is a licensed creative arts therapist with a private practice in New York City. Hi, Elaine. How are you today?
Hi, Teri. I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Would you mind filling in any gaps from the introduction and sharing a bit more about you with our audience?
Sure. So what I'm doing these days is my private practice in New York City. I'm focusing on work with siblings of people who have autism and other disabilities. And I also part-time offer some art therapy groups at a school in Brooklyn for kids and teens who are on the spectrum.
So tell us some more about that. How are you currently improving quality of life for individuals with autism?
In the school groups, I'm working using art as a way for them to express themselves. So it really helps with having a good sense of self and communicating. So the art expresses as well as creating a way to start, bridging to verbal communication as well. So the groups also work on social skills and also on the sensory level. So helping kids work with a wide range of materials that helps them to learn to tolerate and enjoy like a lot of different sensory experiences, everything from like paint to clay to paper.
Yeah. And what age ranges are the individuals in those groups?
It's a big age range overall. The school has children ages 7 up to 21, and then the classroom groups are broken down into, age ranges that are much smaller. So kids are with other kids, close to their age.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. So as a creative arts therapist, you mentioned that you're also doing a lot of work with siblings in your private practice.
Correct. Private practice, I'm working with siblings, children, teens, and adults, and using arts and also movement and talking, all as ways to explore the experience of what it's like being a sibling. For many people who have that experience often don't have opportunities to meet other people who had such an experience, or even to really talk about it a lot, or use other ways to express themselves, and it can leave people feeling somewhat alone with that. It's not it's becoming a more common experience, I think, as more people get diagnosed, especially with autism.
Yeah, that was something I was really excited about when I learned that that's what your work is. I think this is something that would really appeal to the autism quality of life community, just knowing that there are therapists out there like you who work individually directly with siblings to help with some of the issues that they're also going through.
Mm.
Could you tell us a bit about these sibling issues in general, the types of things that you see in your practice? So what are some of the common struggles that siblings might have?
Sure. I think there are some struggles that are kind of common throughout the lifespan, and then some that are very specific depending on the age group. So I think some big themes across all ages is there's often guilt about kind of like a survivor guilt of being a sibling who's neurotypical, who's viewed as okay, right? And that can mean a lot of different things to a person. And that's often, all of these things are taking place, of course, in the context of one's family. So that always has an influence on how someone experiences being the sibling, right? But certainly guilt is a really typical one. Often jealousy or resentment, feeling they didn't get as much attention, even with the most, well-intentioned parents who are really really putting in big efforts. Just the circumstances do require usually that the sibling or siblings, with autism or with a disability really do take up so much of the family's time and attention, money, everything. It's a real necessity. So I think it's in no way a reflection on like bad parenting. It's really like, this is just what happens in a family system. And it often leaves the more neurotypical sibling feeling some level left out. And that may not be the only feeling. I think that's important to remember. There's usually so many positive feelings that siblings have as well. It can be a very positive, formative experience for people to often report feeling that they've become a person who has more understanding of people, more empathy, more patience, more tolerance of people with differences. It can be such a mixed experience.
Yeah. And that has been pointed to in some research as well. So it's neat to know that you're experiencing that in your practice with individuals who are sharing that with you. So how did you get into this area? Why did you decide that you wanted to work with siblings in your practice?
Good question. So the main reason is, I myself have two siblings and one who has Down syndrome, and that was such a formative experience for me.
Okay.
And like a full range of feelings about it, and I didn't realize until I was a young adult what an impact it had on me. I think like many people, it's like that was the water I swam in. I grew up and that was my family and that's what I knew. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until my early 20s that I started to reflect on some of the experiences I was having in my life, some of the choices I was making, and starting to see it in a context and starting to really want to explore that more. And as I did a lot of my own personal growth work through therapy, I found that immensely not only healing, but it gave me a lot of understanding and a real desire. I felt like there wasn't much out there. Mm-hmm. And one of the key things that I found that some people you may or may not have heard of is SibNet. And Don Meyer's work, who works with a lot of siblings out in Washington.
Yeah, can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I don't even know how long ago it was. I think he's been running this for quite a while. His name is Don Meyer, and he created the Sibling Support Network. And he really recognized that there was such a need for siblings to connect with each other because often they were very alone or felt alone with their experience. Didn't always grow up knowing other siblings and having these very unique family experiences that weren't typical of a lot of their friends. And created some group for children called Sib Shops that were very playful and a great way for siblings to connect. And then some online forums like discussion groups that are private, just for people who are siblings. And it's a wonderful support group, and that really opened my eyes. I think that it's so valuable to have different types of support. The support groups are so important. Having just friends are important, and I think therapy isn't needed or wanted by everyone, but it's certainly a way to take something deeper and explore. Uh-huh. And, when I work with people, they don't have to just explore sibling issues, but I offer that it's something I have researched a lot, have personal experience with, and, I'm really passionate supporting people through. And I think that for anyone who wants to look at that in a deeper level, therapy can be a profound way to do that.
Yeah. So for some siblings who might be thinking, hey, maybe I want to understand this a little better. I want to get in touch with some of those feelings that I might be suppressing. Could you share with them what that process might be like and how are the types of questions you might ask them in order to tap into some of what they're experiencing?
Sure. I don't have any real set of questions. I think when I first meet someone, I'm really interested in just getting to know what it is they want to share with me. So it's very open. What is it that you're looking for? What's going on right now? What, really whatever someone brings in. So it's starting with where someone is at. And then certainly as they start to share things, I'll, invite more questions and may then ask some more specific things as we get to know each other to help them start putting some pieces together, reaching some deeper understanding. But there's no like set of things that I'm like on with people really.
Yeah. And so you take a family systems type of approach too, and trying to consider how the parents might have interacted with both the sibling and the individual with the disability and interactions.
Yes, that's definitely a piece of it. I look at things from a couple different angles with people. So I do have a lot of background experience and training with family systems, and I do bring that lens to it. And it's very important, looking at it from that view, because that colors so much. How did everyone interact? And how did each person respond to these different events? Because people may have had very different experiences or views of what's going on. So I do bring that in, and I'm also bring in, sort of a psychodynamic approach. And I'm also looking at helping people look at just how are they working energy in their body? How is this affecting them on that level too? Are they depressed? Is there more energy? Is there like, I can do everything kind of, survival, right? Like, well, I got it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All different presentations. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I integrate that as needed and as wanted by people. There are many people who are very interested in that, some who aren't so sure. And I never agenda that people must, engage in a certain way. But I find that some of the ways that that's very helpful, one thing that can be really a great way to look at the family piece of it is to invite someone to make a visual genogram of their family. And for your guests who don't know what a genogram is, it's basically like a family tree.
Ooh.
And it's something that, often is just done with writing down, the generations and who's connected to who, and then giving some information about them. Doing it visually could certainly add in the written material, but people have license to do it in whatever creative way they want to show that.
Uh-huh.
Now, I can give guidance and structure to someone if that feels really new to them or they're not sure how to do that. And I've had some people just dive in, so someone show their family as an animal family or what animals each person would be in the family. Right? So there's these ways that already they're starting to tap into the nonverbal through doing that, and taps into what's often we have is like just these felt sense of things that would be hard to tell someone just in words, but the image captures so much of it. And then when someone's looking at something they've made, whether it's a painting or sculpture or drawing, that gives them some distance from what they've just created too. They can step back and we can look at it together. And my job is not to analyze it, it's to facilitate their process of looking at that. So I'll often ask questions, but I'm not trying to figure out what it means. What's really important is their relationship. What are they starting to see? Like they had something that they were putting out, but they may often, as they look at it, have other associations or feelings come up, and that takes them often further into an exploration. And I find that often is very powerful for people. It often helps them make connections or tap into feelings that they weren't so clear about.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm wondering if you can share an example of some kind without identifying any clients. So you mentioned the genealogy example. I think it would be neat to maybe share a specific case of either an individual on the spectrum or a sibling who you've worked with, and tell us about that.
This was a somewhat different project, but similar with family imagery, where I had invited someone to bring in actual photographs of their family, like photocopies of photos. So this is very intense. Like I wouldn't necessarily do this with, so it would depend on the relationship and where someone's ready to go, because actual pictures there's much less distance there, right? You're saying in a way, it's not like imagery representing, it's pretty right there. But that can be very powerful, and to make a collage of family pictures and then invite someone to make, after the initial version, do you want to make any change with that? How would you like to change this picture? And this person that I was working with actually removed and moved the photo of one of the family members like far away, so that was a big piece to process, like the feelings around having a sibling, like where they were positioning them and like putting them where there could be distance. And that was, a very fraught and vulnerable thing for that person, really, to explore what it meant to explore creating, that came with a lot of, I think, sadness and guilt, but also some real honesty.
Yeah. It sounds like a really good way to be able to tap into those feelings that they might not even know they're experiencing until they're in the midst of this activity, and all of a sudden they're making certain decisions, and then they kind of realize what those implications are, and, oh, maybe I do have these feelings. What does this mean? How can I think about this in the future?
Right. And I think this is where, having an ongoing relationship with a therapist is so powerful, that something like that, I'm aware, even talking about it, how this could be hard for families to hear, right? It could be very, but I think that really having a place where you can express anything, everything that's there. I find for most people being able to say those things that would be not really allowed, express resentment or feelings of hatred, which all siblings have anyway. It's like siblings are where we work that stuff out. And so if I find when people I work with can really get to some of those more difficult feelings, it usually actually allows them to also access the more loving feelings, because that stuff isn't in the way. They're letting that be there too. And then they usually can also tap into the real love and care and closeness that is often there as well. So I find that's a very important part of the work. And again, I'm not saying that everyone has to go there. That's not always the case for everybody.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yes. One thing I'm curious about, how do you navigate, so if you're working with children or teenagers and maybe the parents are interested in how the therapy's going or asking you questions before or after the session to just try to gather more information, how do you? Right.
When I first meet with parents, and kids, I let them know, I talk with them about confidentiality, and it will vary a bit depending on the age. With younger kids, I'll share more information with parents and give them like a general sense of, your child is working on this. You might expect after this session, maybe just notice if they're having a time today, they did some deep work. With teenagers, it's really appropriate and important to give them more privacy and more boundaries on that. And I let parents know that, they're at an age where that's really important. And I will certainly let you know if I have big concerns. And I certainly talk with everyone about, right, if there's anyone at risk of being of harm to someone else, anything like that. Parents know that this is private. Does that answer?
Yeah. I thought that just might be helpful for some families listening in who might be curious how the sessions work. So
yeah,
it would be just like any typical therapy session where there is that confidentiality.
Right.
And then depending on the ages, if you think it is appropriate to share more with parents.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I certainly, if parents are certainly can, if they're bringing a child in there, concerned about sibling issues, certainly I do meet with parents, again, more with the younger children, usually every 4 to 6 weeks or as needed, depending on what's going on, and getting information from them how things are going at home, and also, providing some psychoeducation, because I think parents have so much on their own plate, and it's such a powerful experience to be a parent in general. But if you have a child with special needs, there's a lot happening all the time. And so I do provide information about what kind of things to look for, what are some typical, not only struggles, but some of the good things too, like to expect. I think we often therapy, we're like problems, but it's like room about everything. I don't want to highlight just the negative here. I think that it's such a mixed.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things, parents can look for is with younger children and with teens, there tend to be some different ways kids will respond. And again, it depends on a lot of factors. Some of it's also like just their personality. They're going to tend toward a certain way of handling things. So, some kids will tend to internalize a lot of their feelings. And that's a typical kind of reaction also for siblings, because sometimes if they're feeling like the child with the disability needs a lot of attention, there can be a tendency to just kind of try to deal with everything self and not make waves. So that's one response. Right? There's a real typical kind of like internalizing. I won't show my anger. I won't cause any waves. I'm going to be this perfect child and do well in school and help take care of my sibling. That. And then there are other kids who are like, demand, like I want the attention, right? And I'm going to act out just as much till I get it. So you can see different responses.
All these different personas. It would be kind of neat to make almost a cartoon or a...
Oh, the manga. Create characters.
Yeah, some kind of visual characters of these different sibling personas of how they're acting out.
Yeah, and that kind of thing is great with kids too, like doing characters for their emotions, for different parts of them. Like, what part of you is here right now? Is this the angry part? Is this the shy part? Is this the scared part? Because it's another thing. A lot of kids either don't have enough information or just can't comprehend it yet. They're too young, and it's like often wonder, is autism catching? Am I going to get this?
Yeah.
What does this mean for my siblings' future? Are they going to be okay? Like all kinds of fears that they may not even be able to articulate. They may not be really formed.
Yeah, those are really good points. And so thinking about moving into adulthood, so working with some of siblings across the lifespan.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about some of the issues that might come up for children, but what about for older siblings when they're thinking about the aging process and everything? Can you expand on that?
Definitely. I think that's very important. And I see that a lot of the adults, on these, like on Don Meyer's listserv, the SibNet, so much support is needed. People are hungry for that. And it's because as one gets older, many people either do have to take care of their sibling as the primary caretaker or, wonder about, will that happen? Will it be like? And that can be such a range of experiences. Some parents start preparing for that many years ahead and, prepare trusts and get on the list for group homes, all kinds of things, talk with the older siblings about that. So at least something is starting to be put in place. So there's not only security for the sibling with autism, but also that the whole family is part of that and has some say in it and has some sense of where things are headed. That still can be daunting and bring up a lot of questions and feelings. And then for the siblings who have parents who, for whatever reason, haven't really planned for the future, that can be a really scary question mark hanging over the future. Am I going to have to give up my whole life to do that? What if, if someone's got a partner, is that person on board with that? If you have your own children, how are you going to manage both things? Do you bring a sibling into your home? Are you going to be navigating needing to live by their group home? I mean, there's many different situations, but I think it can be a cause of a lot of anxiety for siblings.
Exactly. Yeah, I can definitely testify to that, being a sibling of a 25-year-old. And right now there are tons of questions. And so there'll be times when I think about those things, and it's just unknowns. I mean, there's nothing that can be done at this point in time, but definitely wonder just how things will be in the future. So I can imagine that plenty of siblings are asking those types of questions. As far as getting types of support for siblings, seeking out answers, have you gotten into like information sharing with adult siblings and connecting them with services and resources? I
do have some services and resources I connect people with. And that's actually really important because as a therapist, I'm not helping people with that more practical end of things. I want to give them the resources to get support if they want, figure out how do I handle this with, legal matters, or how do I, learn about Medicaid. These are not things I'm directly helping people with, but I certainly give them referrals and resources for that. And there's some great organizations, probably across the country, but where I'm in New York City, I know there's some groups that have been forming and really creating more group support for that. So I'd be happy to share that. If people feel free to contact me.
That's great.
Along with some of the concerns people have about becoming a caretaker, I find a lot of young adults often are starting to see patterns in their own lives and really looking at their relationships they're in, or why are they not in a relationship, whether or not to have children, concerns about if they have children, what are the chances they might also have a disability, and what are their feelings about that. And often a lot of just relationship and work issues. Many people with disabilities often find themselves in caretaking roles in jobs. And then there's probably also many people who steer way clear of that and go do something, got nothing to do with it, So it's interesting for people as they start to look at that. And those aren't necessarily problems. That may just be something interesting to look at. But for some people, that's it. Yeah. And there are people for whom it may be in the way. It may be like, I'm really afraid to have a relationship because, I'll never find someone who will be my partner because my sibling's involved. I have to, things like this that can be concerns. People sometimes don't even realize the way they may be stopping themselves because of.
Yeah, just getting an understanding. Yeah, another circumstance that comes to mind is maybe being part of a multi-sibling family, and how that might work if some siblings are more of the caretakers, and depending on where the sibling falls on that continuum, there might be just different feelings of guilt or detachment or wanting to be more involved depending on where they fall. So there really are just such differences across siblings.
Yeah, so true, so true. And you're right. And there's, a group of siblings that can often create some really big family mix, right? When people are in different directions. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can just really help to shape the individual's identity, whether or not it's necessarily true. I mean, they can think certain things about themselves and then just move forward in life having these beliefs. And so sometimes it helps to work through some of those things in therapy and get a better understanding of what are some self-imposed beliefs versus things that they can change. What kinds of things within your practice are you looking forward to then in the next few months? I think you mentioned starting up some groups.
Yes. So because I think it's so important for siblings to not feel alone and to connect with others who've had some similar experiences, I really want to offer something. There are many support groups out there, and I really encourage people who are seeking support to join those, because those can be fantastic. And I'm really interested in offering some group therapy experiences for people who want to take that even deeper. And I'm looking at some calendar dates right now. I'm hoping towards the end of April, maybe beginning of May, to do a workshop. And if there's interest, maybe create an ongoing group, but to do a workshop where people can explore some of the things that are important to them about their experience, and using some of the art, some of the body movement work to explore that.
That sounds great. Yeah, that's definitely something we can share in the show notes and put out there for anyone who's in the New York City area who might be interested in attending one of your groups.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to do that. Wanted to do for a long time.
Good. Yeah. And I hope that this conversation today might inspire some other therapists or professionals to get out there and run groups for siblings, have a greater interest in this area if they're not already working with siblings as part of their family work, and just to remember this important segment of the population who could really benefit from this type of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else that you feel like we should touch upon today that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think the last thing that maybe I can emphasize is how, well, I believe, not just for siblings in general, I have such a strong belief that using the arts and working with the body can just help make the whole process of therapy be more fun, but also deeper, and often change that can happen a bit faster and more integrated. Often people can have an experience that's not just insight in their mind. I think while so much talk therapy, I'm a big believer in that too. It's so beneficial. But when it can be on all these different levels of experience, that you can just bring it so much more into your life. I think it can be more than just having a lot of understanding about things and nothing changing, to really making change.
Well put. So do you have any recommended resources for maybe parents who are listening or therapists who might be interested in learning more about bringing in elements of art therapy or body psychotherapy into their work? Can you point them towards some resources?
Just for more information about art therapy, a good starting place for that, for anyone who is unfamiliar with it, to check out the American Art Therapy Association, and that is AATA.org, AATA.org. And
okay. I'm impressed you knew that on the spot. Sorry about that.
And there's also two good resources just for general stuff with body psychotherapy. The institute where I received my training is the Institute for Core Energetics, and that is coreenergetics.org.
Okay.
And then there's also the United States Association for Body Psychotherapy, USAB.org. I know it's very long. Yeah, I can write all this down. You can post it on the notes. I don't expect listeners to remember. And then, as mentioned, Don Meyer's Sibling Support Project. I think it's siblingsupport.org, right? He has a number of things going on there, some different online support groups for siblings of different ages. I think there's one for younger siblings. Mm-hmm. I don't know how young. I think like teens. I think younger kids probably don't have that private internet access in that way. There's one for adult siblings, and I believe he may have something on there for parents who want to understand sibling issues, but I haven't looked at that in a while. He also does sib shop trainings for and I did that a long time ago, but anyone working in this field, don't have to be a therapist, but if there's anyone interested in providing groups for kids, sib shops is a very fun model. It's not therapy, but it's just a fun play model for kids to connect to our siblings.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good recommendation there. All right, so how can our audience learn more about you and your work? Do you have a website and ways that people can get in touch with you?
I do. So my website is elaineoswald.com. It's ELAINEOSWLD.com. And I also have a Facebook page, and that's usually good for seeing any current updates of.
Okay. Yeah. So where can they find that page?
Elaine Oswald LCAT, and that's LCAT. And that stands for Licensed Creative Art Therapist.
Oh, okay. Well, we can put that in the show notes too.
I'll be doing a workshop for adult siblings on Saturday, May 20th in New York City. And it'll be a couple hours in the afternoon. And I'll be posting information about that soon on both my website and Facebook, so stay tuned.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay. So May 20th. Great. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have to follow along and see as you have more details about the workshop.
Yes. Yeah. We'll be keeping people posted that way, and people can certainly reach out to me if they have any specific questions.
Okay. That's great. Okay, well, Elaine, thank you so much for taking the time to share about your work with the Autism Quality of Life community. I think what you're doing with siblings is so exciting, and it is such a needed area. I hope that people continue to follow you and your work, and that your practice continues to blossom, and that things go really well in your world. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Teri. I really appreciate the opportunity and really excited to have siblings have their needs increasingly recognized out there. I really appreciate your support.
Great. Okay. Well, take care. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi there. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've gotten a lot of value from today's show. It would be great if you could share this episode with family and friends, and also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. To learn more about today's guest, you can visit our website at www.autismqualityoflife.com. Also on our website, you can find links to our social media pages and our YouTube channel. Sign up for the Autism Quality of Life newsletter to receive exclusive content and bonus interviews. Thanks again for joining us on our mission to improve quality of life for teens and adults with autism. We'll catch you next time.